Hello everyone, back to your day's second video. Going to have a look at weather next week's 10 days for today's second video. We'll also include the Beijing Climate Center in this the next 40 days. That takes us well into January. We'll start off with the latest developments in the stratosphere, see what GFS is forecasting for stratospheric developments around Christmas. We still, of course, at stratospheric warming. We'll start off with that for today's video. So a lot going on, a lot to cram in. I hope you find it interesting and informative. Just say the 5-day forecast was released earlier on today. So you're going to be 5 days of two halves, starting off quite cold and dry, and then becoming milder and wetter later on in the 5-day forecast period. It might include a bit of a snow event on Saturday. And I'm keeping a close eye on it. If we can do snow watch tomorrow, when Saturday is within the time frame of the GFS models. At the moment, looks like it'll be mainly restricted to the north and over high ground, but still a little way off. So that's why I'm just holding off on snow watch until tomorrow. Tonight we're going to have the 19th Christmas update. Although, of course, this video now, or these videos that are within the week to 10 day time frame, will be covering the Christmas period as well with the GFS. So you'll see a little bit about Christmas for this video, but the main Christmas update will be coming up for you tonight. Right, we'll start off with the situation in the stratosphere then. So this is how the latest forecast is looking for the stratospheric temperatures over the North Pole at 10 HPA, 10 HPA being kind of like one of the top levels of the atmosphere in the stratosphere. So we've got those blue and purple colours over North Pole. That's the cold temperatures in the stratosphere at 10 HPA. It should be cold. It's a cold time of year, of course, over Pole, both on the surface and in the atmosphere and the stratosphere. We've got these green and yellow colours around the edges. So this is for 20th of December. Already some slight warming is beginning to occur over Siberia. But this is what happens on the latest GFS operational run. We do get quite a big warming of the stratosphere appearing around Christmas Eve. We've got those red colours turning up there in the stratosphere over the North Pole, beginning to penetrate into, over Siberia, beginning to penetrate into the North Pole with those red colours. Then red colours kind of like fizzle out a little bit as they get to the pole. We go to those green and yellow colours. That's giving the polar vortex and those blue cold temperatures, giving it a real battering. You'll notice how those blue colours are becoming stretched and elongated. That tells us that the polar vortex and at its roots in the stratosphere and those cold temperatures really will be under major stress by the time we get through to Christmas and beyond Christmas. Now, I'm not sure this is quite enough to reverse the zonal winds at this point with these yellow and green colours, but it would certainly be a major hit to the zonal winds. It would be a major hit to the cold temperatures in the stratosphere and to the polar vortex at its roots. That's for GFS operational. This is what the GFS parallel run is showing. It's quite interesting. So again, we're starting off on the 20th of December, those blue and purple colours up there over the North Pole. We've got these yellow and green colours around the edges once again. This will be the operational run of the GFS next year. By the way, at the moment, it's just being run in parallel. So, again, we get this major warming of the stratosphere appearing over Siberia around Christmas Eve and beginning to penetrate in towards the North Pole, as well as the blue and purple colours are kind of like being shunted down towards Greenland and the North Atlantic. Now, that first warming of the stratosphere kind of eases off as we go through to Boxing Day. But then look what happens as we get to the very end. We get a second renewed bout of warming starting to appear over northwestern parts of Russia. And I think that one, if it came off like that, we had the first hit of warming around Christmas Eve, and then we had a second hit of warming of the stratosphere after Christmas. I think that would do the polar vortex in. I think that would see these blue and purple colours finally being torn apart, and you will find greens, yellows and oranges appearing over top of the pole, with blues and purples disappearing. So It's interesting that the parallel GFS is showing a second warming right at the very end of its run. Bear in mind, this is all still in the unreliable time frame of the GFS. It's beyond 192 hours, so there is a degree of uncertainty about it, although the GFS has been very consistent about this first warming that occurs just before and then into the Christmas period. That second warming is something new that the parallel GFS is just showing on this running. I don't think it's shown it before, so we'll just watch how it plays out. It could be that the first warming before and over Christmas will kind of like do real damage to the zonal winds and to polar vortex, but it might be that the second, if we get a second warming after Christmas, that could be the one that really does reverse those zonal winds. So we should wait and see how that plays out. This is from the University of Berlin. This is the ECMWF 10 HPA temperature forecast at 240 hours, which is day 10. And the ECM is also picking up on this first warming now of the stratosphere over Siberia. Those orange colours just there, that is the warming that the GFS is also picking up on in that time frame around the 22nd of December. Just that's around when it starts, 21st, 22nd of December. And the ECM, as I say, that is beginning to pick up on these developments over Siberia as well. So we'll be monitoring that over the next few days, of course. These are how the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles are looking for the next couple of weeks. Looking at Nottingham in the Midlands today. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Nottingham. Starting off pretty cold. We've got these cold easterly winds establishing at the moment, and they'll be with us through to the end of the week. Then over the weekend, the temperature lifting up. That's as we bring rain or possibly snow in from off the Atlantic on Friday night and Saturday. And then beyond that, just staying very close then to the 30-year temperature average as we're going through next week. It looks unsettled with temperatures not too far from average. This is Christmas, a little bit beyond Christmas just here. And at that point, there is a lot of scatter. So we've got several ensembles that are quite mild, but we do have a few that are going really quite cold as well. So it still like Christmas is pretty much up for grabs. As far as precipitation is concerned, quite a lot of dry weather over the next few days, but from the weekend, then through next week, it is looking unsettled with plenty of rainfall to come. Temperature anomalies from the 12th through to the 20th of December are forecast to be around or possibly even slightly cooler than average, but it's not a big deviation. Precipitation anomalies around or slightly wetter than average, particularly for western parts of the country. That's how the GFS is looking on Sunday. So on Sunday, we get rid of those cold winds. It's all covered by the forecast. We get rid of those cold winds. There'll be a weather front that's on the east side of the country first thing on Sunday morning, being chased away by these westerly winds. And as we go through next week, we go into an increasingly unsettled spell of weather. So wet and windy weather sweeping in through Monday and Tuesday. And then we keep this area of low pressure close to the UK as we go through into the second half next week. There'll be showers or longer spells of rain spiralling around that area of low pressure. As we move towards day 10, start to run up towards Christmas, we begin to move that low pressure a little bit further south and start to pull in some colder air from the north as this ridge builds across the country. That could bring certainly a more seasonable feel as we run up towards Christmas. You would expect frost and fog to be a hazard with that. We get to Christmas and we have this ridge building up from the southwest, so that's introducing milder air to the far north and west of the country on Christmas Eve. But for the rest of us, we're under this ridge of high pressure. It would probably still be quite cold under that high. I suspect there would still be a risk of frost and fog, particularly for eastern parts of the country. Over Christmas, that ridge moves away to the east. We bring another trough in from off the Atlantic, bringing more cloud and rain. And then that's how we finish up with this GFS run, which is now ending at Friday, 28th of December, going back into wet and windy conditions once again. This is the operational GFS. This is the GFS parallel run, all looking very similar on Thursday, on Sunday I should say, so it's wet across eastern parts of the country. That moves away, and then we're going to quite a stormy early part of next week, wet and windy conditions sweeping in from off the Atlantic Tuesday to Wednesday. Then we go through to Wednesday and Thursday, low pressure again close to the country, bringing showers or longer spells of rain. Once again, we move up towards day 10. That low pressure begins to slip away to the southeast. We start to build a little bit of a ridge to our north and start to pull in some colder air from the north and the northeast. That's how things are looking at day 10, which is Saturday, 22nd of December. Generally dry under that ridge, but quite cold. You would expect frost and fog as we run up towards Christmas. And then beyond that, we go into the extended range. So this is Sunday the 23rd of December, bringing this low pressure in from off the Atlantic, more cloud and rain with that. And then we get to Christmas Eve. That low pressure begins to slip southwards. High pressure's building close to Iceland and Greenland, and the wind is turning into the east. That'll be bringing colder air in from the east, maybe even with some snow showers across eastern parts of the country, potentially for Christmas Eve, would you believe? That takes us a little bit beyond Christmas to Boxing Day. Still looking pretty cold. High pressure just out to west of the country, pulling down these pretty chilly northerly winds. And then that's how we end the parallel GFS run, with high pressure out to the west, low pressure over Scandinavia, very cold air surging through Scandinavia, and we're seeing these cold northern winds just on the periphery of that cold air that's sitting up to the northeast. There's the upper air temperature showing the -10, -15 Celsius isotherm widely across Scandinavia, and we are importing a little bit of that into northeastern parts of the country as we're up to the 28th of December. So the parallel GFS run wants to have things pretty cold over and after Christmas. This is how the GEM is looking. The Canadian model, wet and windy conditions on Saturday into Sunday. That clears away into the North Sea, and then we go into a wet and windy early part of next week. Similar to the GFS parallel run, into the second half of next week, we start to move this low pressure away to our south and pull in some colder winds from the east in the second half of next week, maybe with some snow showers at eastern parts of the country. That's how we look at day 10. Pretty cold, you have to say, with the GEM. High pressure sitting just to our north. We're pulling in the winds from a northeasterly direction. Let's have a look at the upper air temperatures. And certainly from the north, we're pulling in cold air from the northeast. So the GEM is colder actually for next week after a wet and windy start to next week. And then we've got the ECMWF looking like this, wet and windy again over the weekend. Slightly quieter day on Monday before more stormy conditions rattling from off the Atlantic late Monday and into Tuesday. Middle of next week looking very unsettled, showers or longer spells of rain, and these unsettled conditions, quite stormy conditions, taking us up to day 10. Which is Saturday 22nd of December, again looking really unsettled there with low pressure to the north of Scotland. So we've got the ECMWF and GFS operational runs looking unsettled and westerly to day 10. And then the GFS parallel and GEM Canadian model looking quite a lot colder through the second half of next week. So uncertainty within the model output from as early as around Wednesday or Thursday next week. These are the options that are on the table with the GFS for, let's go down to Christmas Day. So these are the options that are on the table with the GFS for Christmas Day in terms of its ensembles. So it's from the Icelandic Met Office. We've got 21 ensemble members that look like this, and they're very unsettled on Christmas Day with low pressure almost over the top of the country and bringing in those westerly winds from off the Atlantic. So they're wet, they're unsettled, not particularly cold, but they're certainly very unsettled solutions for Christmas Day. Then we've got another 17, including the control run of the ECMWF ensemble. That looks, these are mild, these have got high pressure just to the south of the country over France with low pressure up to the north, and so these ones are bringing in a westerly wind. A little bit unsettled for northern parts of the country, drier for the south, and maybe pretty mild for Christmas Day. And then we've got another 13, which are much colder. So these ones have a strong blocking signal on Christmas Day up to the northwest of the country, close to Greenland and Iceland, would be below average pressure to the southeast, and these ones will be putting down cold northeasterly winds. So it's a minimal option for through the ECM ensembles to be cold for Christmas, but there is the possibility. However, the ECM ensembles at the moment seem to be favouring generally an Atlantic flow on Christmas Day between Mose 21 and Mose 17. Looks like the ECM ensembles are favouring an Atlantic flow and a relatively mild Christmas Day. But there is a small chance that Christmas Day could be a lot colder. And we see within the GFS output, the split between the operational and the parallel, that obviously there are either milder or colder options that are on the table within the GFS as well. So Christmas still seems to be uncertain and still seems to be up for grabs. We'll have your 19th Christmas update tonight. Finally, just have a look at the Beijing Climate Center. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down into 10-day periods. The first 10-day period will take us from the 11th through to the 20th of December, with below average heights to the north, above average heights down to the south. So in the coming 10 days, we're bringing in a westerly flow, very unsettled, and probably not overly cold, probably quite mild as well. Then we go through to the next 10-day period, which is over Christmas. This is from the 21st of December through to the 30th, with the below average heights almost over top of the UK, but also going to our east into central parts of Europe. The above average heights are being pushed away to the southwest, moving in that sort of direction. Heights are rising a little bit to the north as well. This would send the jet stream to the south of the UK. So we're going on to the cold side of the jet there over Christmas, and that will therefore be unsettled, but also potentially colder for Christmas. Then the next 10-day period, going from the 31st of December through to the 9th of January, has below average heights to our south, above average heights pushed out into the middle of the North Atlantic. And again, it looks like heights are rising to the north and to some degree to the northeast as well. You would expect to be putting cold air down into that trough at this point. In fact, we could even be setting up easterly winds, so that could be a pretty cold start to the new year. Actually, if the Beijing Climate Center is right there, that could be quite a cold start to the new year, albeit the blogging season is quite weak. And then we're into the final 10-day period, which is the 10th through to the 19th of January. Again, above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic, below average heights to the northwest. Looks like probably doing something a bit like that, the flow and with the jet. So it's a bit of a northwest-southeast alignment to the jet stream. Probably unsettled again, and maybe a little bit mild as that of jet streams, just that little bit further north, although not overly mild by any means. Will probably still be quite cool, to be honest. Temperature anomalies in the week ahead, well, the next 10 days I should say, the 11th to 20th of December, are a little bit milder than average for England and Wales, but not a big deviation. Most places coming out close to average. But the next 10-day period, which is the 21st through to the 30th of December, that one goes colder than average for the UK, and also going colder than average for Scandinavia. It looks a very mild Christmas though down in the southeastern part of Europe. So yes, there is a little bit of wintry potential there on the Beijing Climate Center for Christmas. Temperature anomalies are below average. It's unsettled, so there'd be precipitation. Therefore, you wouldn't rule out some wintry potential for Christmas based on what the Beijing Climate Center is showing there. And then things go even colder in the next 10-day period. So this is going from the 31st, New Year's Eve, of December through to the 9th of January. And we are coming out really substantially colder than average in the UK and across Scandinavia and many central parts of Europe. If you look at the temperature anomaly scale, I think we're going down to kind of like 2 to 4 degrees below average there. So that would actually be a very cold start to the new year. You would be talking about really cold weather with that. Certainly cold enough for snow. Probably daytime temperatures struggling to get much above freezing, and hard overnight frost. So that does look like a really wintry start to 2019, I have to say, from the Beijing Climate Center. Quite unusual to see a climate model that cold with its temperature anomalies. Normally they favour milder conditions, so if it's overdoing the temperature, could be even colder than that. That could be a very cold start to 2019. Not sure about it, it is a bit of a shock, but we shall see. It could be, but it's picking up on something. And then we go through to the final 10-day period, which is the temperature 19th of December. Still a little bit below average with the temperature anomalies then, but by nowhere near as much. So a recovery of temperatures beginning to take place through the middle part of January, but still a bit on the cold and average side. Precipitation wise, the week ahead looks, the next 10 days I should say, looks rather above average with precipitation from the 11th to the 20th of December. The next 10-day period, and this over Christmas, it's the 21st of December through to the 30th, and again a little bit above average with precipitation, particularly for England and Wales. So with temperatures going below average, precipitation rates a bit above average, you definitely wouldn't be ruling out the chance of some wintry potential over Christmas with that one. The next 10-day period, which is the 31st of January, 31st December to the 9th of January, and this is when it goes really cold with the temperature anomaly. It's also drier, so of course we explain it all the time that cold air holds less moisture than mild air, warm air. So as it goes very cold with the temperature anomaly of around 2 to 4 degrees below average, obviously the air turns drier. But bear in mind, any precipitation that does fall would be primarily snow with temperature anomalies going that much below average. And then the final 10-day period, which is the 10th through to the 19th of January, close to average with precipitation, maybe hinting at going a little bit wetter as the temperature begins to recover, so we start to get more in the way of precipitation. That is a very cold start to 2019 that's being shown there by the Beijing Climate Center. 2 to 4 degree below average anomalies is quite a shock really from a climate model such as the Beijing Climate Center. Very rare that you will see a model going that cold with its temperature anomaly if it's a seasonal climate model. So we'll just have to wait and see whether that is picking up on something, but potentially a very cold start to the new year. But that's all very speculative. Coming back to the more immediate time frame, it looks as though we're going to start off pretty chilly in the next few days. We're going to turn less cold over weekend and then stormy early next week. There might be a little bit of snow involved with that on Saturday. Snow watch coming up tomorrow. And then next week looks very unsettled to start the week anyway. What happens in the second half of next week, beginning to run up towards Christmas, is uncertain. Some of the model output wants to keep that very unsettled where we're going. Some of the model output wants to turn things a bit colder and drier later next week. And then for Christmas itself, that really does look like it's up for grabs. But there is the chance here within the model output, there is the chance of something quite cold for Christmas, actually. So if you would like to have a cold Christmas and some wintry weather, it's not totally impossible that we could get it, but again, there is also the milder options that are on the table, and probably the milder options are a little bit favoured at the moment, but that's still subject to change. Right, we'll have a 19th Christmas update coming up for you tonight, so come back for that around 7 o'clock. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.